It is really good to be back with you ladies again after a whole month and a little bit of being away from each other. July was packed with things for me and quite a few of you, so we decided to pause for that month. But it is really good to be back. And we have some new faces and we have some other new moms that should be joining us soon. So that'll be nice to meet some new friends and have some discussions about what we're doing to warm and nurture our own hearts. And it's good to have some of you on camera. I know some of you are not able to do that, but whenever you are, it's great to be able to see the faces of our friends. It makes such a big difference. It just feels warm and friendly, and I love that. So I would love to hear what you've been doing this summer, the kinds of things that you have found to be nurturing for your own heart. It is so good, as you all know, each of you know, to share with somebody else what it is that you are doing or working on, or something you felt has been a positive impact on you, even if it's just tiny. So often it's those small and simple things that make a difference. So I would love to hear from any of you that are in a position where you can do that. Hi, Cadence. And, we aren't afraid of silence here. That quiet time gives us time for reflection, time to think about those questions. We mention this often. It takes 30 seconds to process a question, not to mention time to figure out what it is you're going to say about it. So Melanie, go ahead. It's good to have you back.
Thanks. I've had a few good things going on lately. I tried starting the Delphian course a few months ago with a small Marco Polo group, and it was interesting. But when I would sit down and think, okay, I have time to read it, I just felt like it was so dense and like hard to really want to sink my teeth into when I was tired, at the end of the day. So I just kind of dropped off. But it's been interesting as my husband and while our older kids anyway, were little, we were just like saving and scrimping, and now we're still saving, but we have a little bit more leeway. And we're like, you know what, our oldest is 14. If we're going to do family vacations where we like show the kids, more of the country, and we want to give them at least a little experience out of the country if it's possible, and get them used to the idea of flying. They've never flown anywhere. So they could be comfortable doing that on their own as an adult, um, we've thought and made lists so many times of all the great places in the world that we would love to go if we could. And there's so many beautiful places, but it's like, well, if we can only do so much on a budget, where would we care the most to go? What would be the most meaningful to us and to our family? And all the places that we could think of are great, but it's like, you know what? I really don't know that much about the place. I feel like I'd have to do a deep dive into like the history and the culture and the architecture to like appreciate what we'd be seeing and make it really worth our while and worth the money. So anyway, just kind of with that in mind, it just kind of has sparked an interest in the history of different cultures and different areas of the world in a deeper way than I cared before. And so I picked up the first Delphian book again and started reading about Egypt. And for me, Egypt has always been a little on the boring side, if I'm being honest. And like, you always hear about the pharaohs and the mummies and the pyramids, and that's kind of it. But it talks about the mountains and how the rivers bring the loam down, and that the delta expands like a certain number of feet I think it's 8 feet every year that it actually expands into the Mediterranean Sea. And anyway, there was just a lot of different random things like geographically that I learned, and in different aspects of the country that just were so fascinating to me that I had never heard before. And just coming to understand, I guess more the geography that, I don't know, it just opened and sparked a new interest and a viewpoint on what's great about Egypt. And then I got to share that with my sons, and I had this excitement in my voice, you know, and I have one son particularly that felt very much the same about Egypt as I did before, that like, I don't really want to learn about it. It's so boring. But just talking about it and sharing with him some of the things I learned, was like, oh yeah, okay, there's some interesting things there.
Right. And you
So
had something to connect it to because you now had this desire to learn something more about these places that you might want to go see someday. I love that.
yeah. Yeah, so that was kind of an interesting win internally for myself, and being able to share it with them. And I don't know, I'm more excited and interested now
Right.
to continue exploring the Delphian course myself.
Yeah, I love that. And that makes a difference. It really does when we have something to connect it to, when we have somehow, kind of opened our heart a little bit to receive that. That is awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Melanie. And Mercedes, I can't remember if you were all off mute already or if that is your indication that you have something to share.
Oh, I didn't think I pushed anything.
Yeah, no worries. I think you were just off mute because you're in a quiet spot. I'm just
Oh yeah,
making
yes,
sure.
yes.
I
I
didn't
am in a
want
quiet,
to.
and I thought, should I click it? No, until I
No.
need to.
Yeah.
I have been thinking a lot about me, right? Like you said, and how can I am very interested in becoming familiar with the rotation schedule as my children get a little bit older, and that's how I want to incorporate, so many of these beautiful things for them. And so I thought, okay, then what everyone's saying is that I need to do this myself. I have to notebook. They need to see me reading things and being excited about them, and, you know, being creative in whatever that looks like, with a paper about a person or an event, or writing down poetry that I like. And I really appreciated, and I can't remember where I found it, it's probably in lots of places, but the idea that art and poetry and literature can touch us in ways that we can't describe. Like, we can't write down, this makes me feel, it's incomplete. It's not sufficient. And I have often thought, well, I don't know that I've ever read a poem. I was public schooled. I don't know that I've ever read a poem that I thought, oh, this just like gets me right here. I don't know that I ever felt that. And so when I'm reading these things, like, people are like, oh, you just know that it's something you want. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. But I've started to like feel that now. And I've started to read poems and just not even be able to explain why it's so compelling to me, but they are. And I've looked at, beautiful pictures, and I just want to stare at them. And I've never felt like that before. And so it's really been exciting for me to kind of feel these things that everybody talks about, but that I had not necessarily experienced to any great extent myself.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you had that experience recently enough that you remember. You know that difference between not feeling it and wondering, what are these people talking about? This is not something I can relate to. And then all of a sudden, no, you get it. You get it.
Mhm.
And you start to make those connections. I love that. There's a documentary that I just recently watched, and it's about 6 years old. It was done in 2016, and it's called The Gardener. And it's about these famous gardens that are up in Canada. And it was really interesting to me as I was reading the some of the reviews for it. And many of the reviews were talking about, oh, it's just this boring movie. It just shows pictures of gardens and plays old-fashioned, meaning classical music
Right.
in the background, and just really boring, or, it was just interesting that there were these responses, reviews that obviously came from people who were like, maybe like we were in the beginning, and didn't know how to access those feelings, didn't know how to open our hearts to receive that. And then there were so many other people that were saying, oh, it was just beautiful, and the feelings that it caused me to feel, or the impressions I had, or it motivated me to get out in my yard and create a small little, paradise in my own garden, or anyway. But what a difference between a prepared and soft heart and one that just wasn't ready to receive. Doesn't mean you can't. It just means you're not ready yet. I love that. And Melissa wrote over here, Mercedes, noticing things beyond a superficial level, things that make me pause, are the first things that bring me back when I've gotten caught up in the rush of life. And it is kind of this ebb and flow thing. We're doing great and we are just right in and present and aware and experiencing all of the wonder and everything. And then life gets busy and we get caught up and we forget again, and then we go back to noticing those things that, like Melissa said, that make us pause. I love that. Anybody else? Anyone else have thoughts they want to share about things that they've done this past month that have warmed their heart? Things you've noticed, things that have made a difference.
Can I share?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, Laura.
Oh, sorry, I'm driving and I'm balancing Sonic runs. So my kids are, and we don't pay for chores, but on Fridays we do deep cleaning, and so I do a Sonic run
fun.
for the clean. So it's fun. So sorry, I'm balancing, but this summer, like the last few weeks, I've been doing kind of a reset the house to get ready for a new school year. I know we don't, the goal is to be learning all year long and not have a school year, but it's fun to have a good reset, from time to time. So, moving bookshelves and just kind of refreshing things to get learning exciting again. One thing that I did was I set up a table, just a little folding table next to my husband's desk. My husband's been working from home since COVID, and it's not pretty. It's very cluttered right there, but I have just kept up my painting right there. I have a paint by numbers. I'm not fancy. I'm just trying to learn to love painting and those things, because I'm having to learn to love those things. That wasn't a natural thing for me, but having that there where I always have it set up and I can just go and visit with my husband for like 5 seconds when everybody's happy and content, and I can paint a few things and then go on and do the other things that I need to do. I have noticed that I think things through better. Like I'm just a happier person. I think it's just made a big difference for me. And I just wanted to share that, just that having that thing set up where I can go that I'd be so much happier and peace. And so as I'm rearranging my house, I often get to where I have a pile of things that it's like, okay, now what do I do with this? It's stuff that doesn't have a home. I should probably get rid of it. But that processing, that overwhelms me. So, but I've noticed that I'm able to tackle those things more as I have this outlet of painting. I don't know, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's been a joy. It's been really fun and then to watch the painting progress has been fun too. So.
And you feel like an artist, don't you? I'm still so proud of my paint by numbers painting that I did. I was too afraid to do anything else, to start with something bigger than that, but it's okay. And I loved it. Christina, it's good to have you here. We finally hooked up. Let's say got our days together. That's so good. Welcome.
Thanks.
Did you have something you wanted to share? We'd love to hear from you too. If you're ready, and if you want to wait, you can, whatever you're comfortable
I didn't
with.
hear what you guys were talking, like what's the question?
We're just talking about the different things that we're finding are nurturing our own hearts as mothers. Things we might have found, experienced, things that we know always work for us to bring us back if we get caught up in the hustle of life.
Yeah, I mean, the two main ones I've been using for a while now is just getting outside, which I know is a big part of we anyway, but my sister just went through something traumatic, and like we went up in the canyon twice, and one time it rained on us, and we just like stayed in that, just being in nature. I really loved the hymn For the Beauty of the Earth, because I had an experience once where the words came to my mind of it, where it said from the verse says something like, basically from the time you're born, this is surrounding you, letting you know I love you. That's kind of how my interpretation of the verse. But I just really like that. So nature, and then meditation, but with music. So I can't just sit quietly. But I have found this music through a Christian meditation course that uses brainwaves too incorporated in it. That might sound kind of new agey to people, but like it helps me to really get centered again. And I can just listen to it for like 2 minutes with earphones on, or 10 minutes, however much time I have. So
I love that. And I love you brought up this hymn. So I looked it up because I wanted to know what phrase you were talking about. So it says, for the beauty of the earth, for the beauty of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies.
yeah. And I love that it was like saying from the time you entered this world, I've been saying, I love you. Like anywhere you look, if you just look around, you'll see. So that's kind of how I center myself.
I love it. I love that. So getting outside, being in nature, and then that meditation with the music. I love it. I just watched a talk this morning from a lady who had done work down in Ecuador, studying people there, and then and also studying inmates, and people that were incarcerated, and how they find joy, how they find happiness, how she was talking a lot about wonder, and that that is so important to us to be able to hang on to that feeling of wonder in the world around us. And that I thought about that as you were talking, because I think our Heavenly Father, God, has provided for us just evidence everywhere of his love for us. It's just so often we get caught up in the world and our lives, and we stop listening. I know they talk about that experiment where there was somebody in a park like Central Park, some big park where there were lots of people, lots of nature. And there were birds singing, all throughout the park. And if you knew the different birds and their songs, you'd be able to hear so many different sounds. And then other, creature, little frogs or whatever, other sounds that were being made there in the park. But people were just hurrying on, rushing, doing, just working on getting from here to there, right? And not noticing. But then they did some experiment where they would drop some money on the ground, and people's heads would turn. They would hear that sound. It was kind of what you were conditioned to. And it's so good to do things purposefully to bring us back to being aware and having that wonder of the world around us. I just love that. I love when I am responding in that way. What a difference that makes in our hearts, just how we feel. And then I think, have you noticed that it makes a difference in how you respond to the people around you? That's one of the biggest differences, I think. And what is it?
I was just going to say, the word wonder itself, like, I don't know if this is something a teacher introduced to me a while back, but it was like just 3 phrases to ask your kids. And one of them was, I wonder, like, and then they fill in the blank. And I just really think there's power in like any reframing, because I even with like when something bad happens in life, or when I'm struggling with something, I've realized there's 2 different whys. I can ask why are you doing that? Why is this happening to me? Or I can wonder why and ask for clarity and like ask for understanding. And putting wonder in there, like, just softens everything. It just, yeah, I'm a big fan of that. So
I love that word.
Yeah.
And then that reminded me when you said that about John Muir Laws. So I just put that in the chat comments. He suggests that we, when we're outside, especially, or when we're studying something, that we use these phrases. I notice, and pay attention to what it is you notice. I wonder, what do you wonder about that thing that you're looking at? And this reminds me of, oh, that's what you were thinking of. Yeah, I wondered if maybe that's what you were talking about, Christina. I love that. But the wonder, I think that wonder takes us to gratitude. What do you think about that? Just having that sense of awe and wonder and amazement, and that would just be a natural then consequence, feeling gratitude for those things. Oh, Cadence, tell us about that book. Awaking Wonder by Sally Clarkson. Can you talk? You're like, no. Do you see? My children are right here. You know my children. I'm kidding. I'm just filling in the blank there. Yeah, no worries. Okay, so ladies, Sally Clarkson's book, Awaking Wonder. So that is something I will add to my book list. You guys have just an ever-growing book list. And hopefully you have great places you can go to find discount books, because that's, oh yeah, okay, so she's going to type something, so that's good. We'll look for that. Thrift Books is a place that I go. That's one of mine, to find things for good deals. And then if you have local bookshops you can look at, or library book sales, yard sales, just keep your eyes open and you will be directed to books that will bless your life or your family's lives. I can't even tell you how many times that happened for me over the years with my kids. Didn't have a big budget for school. I personally just didn't want to do the charter thing. And I just, for those of you who know me, it's just that I don't like anybody to tell me what to do. So it's like, nope. Sorry, I'm not trading that for money. I just can't do it. So I had to find things on my own, and I would find them in all kinds of places, just these incredible resources and books. So they are out there. They're still out there, even though everyone and their brother is homeschooling now, which is a great thing. All right, sorry, I got off on a tangent. So Cadence is typing for us Things About Awaking Wonder by Sally Clarkson. And I love Sally Clarkson anyway. I just love her books. I love her podcasts. She's just very cheery. I love that she prays for you when she's having, within her little podcast. I love it. Okay, Cadence says, the way she writes is just so inspiring. I follow her on Instagram, and it is so lovely to hear how she talks about motherhood and guiding your children. She talks about spending the night sleeping on their porch and being so inspired by the stars. Oh, I love that, Cadence. Then they start getting ideas for what they want to learn about the next day and the weeks, etc. I love it. I remember waking up my children during the night if there was like a lightning and thunderstorm. We don't have them very often here. And so it was a big, big deal. So I remember specifically one night that we that we went into the living room. We were living at my in-laws' home while they were out of the country on a mission. And we turned the chairs sat with their backs to the window, this big picture window that looked out into the backyard. So we turned the chairs around and opened the curtains and cuddled up with blankets. And we just sat and watched this thunder and lightning storm. And that was one of my favorite memories, and my kids too. It's just so wonderful to spend some time just being with them, just experiencing things with your children. But I love the spending the night sleeping on the porch. We got out one time and got in the back of the truck that was in the driveway and put mattresses in there, and so that we could watch an eclipse. Those things are so much fun. Okay. Oh, I love that. Each of them start writing poems or drawing or researching their own ideas of what they want to learn about. Is that what you're talking about, Cadence? Yeah. I love that. You'll get so much out of your kids if you just give them time. Just because the first time you sit down with them, they don't pour out all these, these giant lists of what they want to learn about. Don't get discouraged by that. Just give them time. Be patient with them. They'll come around. Oh, I love it. Other thoughts or ideas, moms, feel free, to yeah, to hop in and share. Cadence also said, I love Marlene relating this to setting up an escape room. That's a good, is it a podcast or a take five? I can't remember, but that one is so good. I hope you're all going back and back and back into the, oh yeah, it's in the intro course, to the Catch the Vision. I just did it again. I've done it so many times, but there are so many gems there. There's just so much that is worth reading or listening to over and over and over again. I don't think we can get that too much. Those principles are true principles, and we need to be reminded of those things and inspired by them. I was inspired this last week. I didn't get to come back and start the Friday Zoom meetings last Friday as I had originally planned because my mother-in-law passed away that week, on Tuesday of that week that I was going to start back again, and her funeral was on Saturday. So I had lots of family in town, and just all of the reasons why that just didn't work to do the Friday Zoom meeting. But it was such a tender, sweet time. My mother-in-law has 5 sons, no daughters, 5 sons, and then 5 daughters-in-law. And she is really a remarkable woman, and her funeral service was beautiful. Those 5 boys each got up and spoke and shared a little bit about their mother. And Laura was there. Laura and I live close together. And it was such a sweet thing to hear those boys share about their mother. And it was such a good example. She was such a good example to me and to the other sisters-in-law. And I had someone say, well, I'm sure there were things about your mother-in-law that, some negatives that you had to deal with, but she sure sounded like a wonderful person. And I said, there really weren't. She just wouldn't do anything to get in the way of relationships. In fact, my sisters-in-law and I will talk about the fact that, we would over the years, about the fact that we could go to her with a problem and want her advice, and she wouldn't give it. She'd say, oh, I'm sure you're doing a fine job. I'm sure you'll come up with a good answer and a way to make this work for you. I have confidence in you and your ability to do that. And I loved that about her. And I thought, wow, what a wonderful thing to include in your relationships with other people. This confidence in their ability to figure it out, to find out what is the right way. And then probably what I didn't notice back then was just her quiet example of probably living the answer that I was looking for. And now I look back and I see that and I think, wow, that's such a gentle way of teaching. So that's kind of this way of teaching that we're being taught, that's being suggested for us. Just live it. Just live it and let your family discover it on their own. Anyway, that was one of the things I got out of that experience. And it was a very sweet thing. Laura, you stopped for a moment. I was just wondering if you were going to share something.
I love what you just added. Sorry, we're walking and my 3-year-old is going to come up crying, but I love what you added about how she would just be like, oh, I'm sure you can figure it out. What a good example. And at her funeral, when her sons were talking, I thought, man, if I have 4 boys, if I had one son who could talk the way all 5 of her sons talked about her, that would just be amazing. And she was just so inspiring. She inspired me to want to be better. And I love her, even when she was alive. I love her dearly. She was such a sweet woman. So thanks for sharing that little extra.
Yeah. I'm going to share another little thing, which isn't really, well, I don't know how it's related, but you'll find in it whatever is there for you. But this past Sunday, We had so many family members in town, and so during the night, I had friends and ward family members, so lots of friends that offered to take in our family and all the different brothers and their kids, just so they wouldn't have to get hotels, so they could stay close to family. All the hotels are across town. And so it was just so sweet. But during the day, they were all at my house. And so there was about 34 people, during the day that were all here and that we fed here, and, all the kids and everything. And I loved it. I was just in heaven. I love having them all around. I love feeding people at my house. I just love that whole thing. So, but on Sunday, Grandpa a couple of times had talked to the different sisters-in-law and said, I wonder if maybe we could go through Grandma's clothes and see if there's anything that any of the girls want, because I just hate to just give them away. I'd love it if there was something that anyone wanted. And so we decided to make that happen. And if he was ready, then we were ready. And so Sunday afternoon, the sisters-in-law that were here, there were three of us, three of the five, and then about 12, I think, of the granddaughters. And we all went down to Grandma and Grandpa's house, and Grandpa had laid out a bunch of Grandma's clothes and then opened the closet doors, and we started going through Grandma's things. And it was such a sweet experience to go through. And, you think these are young girls from 14 to 29 or so. And going through an older woman's clothing, she's 84 years old. How is that going to be something interesting, to these girls? But it was such a wonderful experience. We spent a couple of hours just going through things, talking about remembrances, of these different articles of clothing, things that we remembered about. Grandma wore this, during this time. Or one of the nieces took a dress that Grandma had worn at her wedding, at the reception and the wedding. And so she wanted to have that dress. Sorry. And just other things that were memories. Lots of t-shirts from Sequoia and from Yellowstone and places that Grandma loved. And so the girls were each taking things like that, things from their missions. They served in Ecuador for 3 years. They served in Guadalajara, Mexico for 3 years. And so they had things from those countries, and the girls remembered stories from those. And they were also so sweet with each other. Oh, would you like this? Are you sure? Is it okay if I took this thing? I mean, they were just so sweet. But them sharing all these memories. And then I knew that in a back closet, there were these vintage dresses of Grandma's, a couple that she had made, and her wedding dress that she had made. And so I asked Grandpa, what about those things? He said, well, I've decided not to wear them anymore. So go ahead and and let the girls look at those and see if they're interested in them. And so we pulled those out. And those were things that I would pull out occasionally just because they were so amazing. They were just incredible, these vintage pieces. And I have a couple nieces that are built like their grandma, just teeny tiny little girls. And curvy, but tiny. These waists, how did they do that back in the day, right? I don't know how that's physically possible. But these nieces got these dresses out and were trying them on, and they were beautiful. And then as they were trying them on, they also found some old pictures of Grandma. So they were bringing them, and look at her. Doesn't she look like Audrey Hepburn? Or isn't she so beautiful? Grandma was so beautiful, And then as the one niece came out in the wedding dress, and that was quite emotional for Grandpa and for everybody else. But it was just so sweet to remember the remarkable life of this woman who was so quiet and shy. She just, in crowds, she would just standing by Grandpa, but kind as could be. The people that have made comments and shared things about her, they were so beautiful. Just how much her refinement and her gentleness and her kindness impacted them throughout the funeral services, and the comments on the social media posts about her. There was just this theme of this remarkable, refined, feminine woman. And to hear all that in a world where right now that's not a focus that we see, and definitely wouldn't be thought of by the mainstream, media as a positive. But here were all of these people that were praising this woman who had those attributes. This is what we find in ourselves when we explore the well-educated heart, when we use music and art and poetry and storytelling and that wonder we find in nature. When we bring those things into our lives, we become more of that kind of a woman, that kind of a mothering influence on those around us, those within our circles of influence. And I think that I know that we limit those possibilities just in our minds. I think we really limit the impact that we, not the impact, but our belief of the impact that we have to influence other people's lives. Because I knew her. I knew how wonderful she was, but I thought her circle of influence would be so tiny because she was so shy. I lived right here where she was, and I didn't see how many people that quiet, refined life impacted. But for all those people who've reached out to me and said, "Oh, I remember your mother-in-law," and they've shared stories, little tiny things that they will never forget and that helped motivate them to be something different, someone different. So, sorry. I want you to think about her and realize that the tiny little things that you do make a difference. Don't limit the reach of that light and that goodness and that warmth. That beauty shines out, and that's what people see. We've talked and laughed about it here as one of us has gotten excited and shared something they were learning about. And we talk about how it bubbles out, and up and over, and we just feel that. Other people feel that from you on a regular basis. So don't hide your light under a bushel. That scripture is so meaningful today. The world needs us. The world needs women who are refined, who are kind and gentle, who appreciate beauty, who have a wonder about the world around them and share that with those in their circles of influence. So that's just something I wanted to share with you. Sorry. Yeah, Melanie, thank you. That's so sweet. Melanie said, "When I saw your post on Facebook about your mother-in-law, it got me thinking, is there anything better I could hope for someone to say about me in my life when I pass? It really was the highest praise for a great life well lived." And really, truly, if you knew her, she was just so quiet. And so for somebody that quiet to have that much of an impact on the world around her, it's pretty incredible.
It was making me think of something because I don't, maybe I am quiet, but I don't think of myself that way. I think of myself as being kind of loud sometimes. And maybe it's because it's with my family. Like I'm just bossy, or I just say what I think. And what I love about the beautiful things that I'm looking at and reading, and like the poetry, it's helping me let go of maybe some of the anger and the quick temper.
Yeah.
So, because sometimes, when we hear about people who are so awesome, we can feel a little bit negative about how we're doing because we don't feel like we're that awesome. but it's not like we're stuck that way, and it's okay. We've been given certain gifts and maybe more of a bossy nature, because he has a mission for us to, and things that he wants us to get done. He's given us those things.
Right.
Just a little softening around the edges to not be so grouchy.
Just a little bit of that polishing.
Yeah. So I just love all the things I'm reading, and I wasn't feeling like you were saying anything like You have to be just like my mother-in-law. Not at
Yeah.
all. She's inspiring. I love hearing about it. Oh, so that's all I want to say.
No, you're so sweet. I love it, Cadence. No, I am the, loud and bossy and overbearing and opinionated and all that stuff, and so I'm so very different from her. And so I'm sitting and listening to all these wonderful things and thinking, wow, and that she never complained. And I think, oh, well, I always complain. So, um, anyway, but what you said, Cadence, is exactly right. Heavenly Father needs each one of us and our different personalities, the different things that we bring. And yes, we need to refine ourselves and work on those things, but we probably spend a lot of time working on the wrong things. We look at things about us and think, oh, well, that's bad because that's not like so and so or this thing or that thing. And maybe he's saying, no, 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 wait, don't change that. I gave that to you on purpose because I need that. So maybe we ought to check in with him and find out, okay, where do I need the polishing and where am I just doing a-okay?
I love that thought, Lori, because I think it's really easy. Like, I think, in our Western culture, it's all about goals and measuring. And, like from a young age, we're like, did you check off your reading chart? I mean, like everything is so like focused on what goals we make and how we make them. And when I think of Ether 12, where he says like, I will show you your weaknesses. I really think in my own life, when I pick what I think needs to be worked on, I feel like I'm like on a stationary bicycle for a long time. Like, I don't feel like I move much. I just feel like I'm pushing and putting all this effort in. But when I seek to know when I take a problem through prayer and get inspiration as to like where to put my effort, I feel like it doesn't feel like so much resistance to the effort, if that makes sense. Like you're able to move in the right direction versus like, so I guess my only thought was like, I've just changed my point of view on goal setting, that I try not to get caught up in just what I think and put my whole point of view to the side until I learn what like the Lord's will would be.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And in my older years, because I'm a lot older than anybody here, I joke that a lot of the changes I've made are simply because I'm too tired, to fight as hard anymore for the, what I want. But that's probably there's a lot of truth there, but that refining over time, and kind of giving up and saying, okay, fine. All right. I'll give up what I think makes more sense than what is going on right now, and let you direct my life. Gosh, it's so much more successful that way. I don't know why I can't remember that every morning when I wake up. I don't know why I have to relearn that lesson every day, but I have so much more success or just contentment, probably. I find more contentment when I get up and just ask, what would you have me do today? I don't need to know the whole plan. I don't need to know where we're going with this, why this is happening, but what would you have me do today? And then just try to do that. It's simpler. It's so much more. I mean, just my saying that to you, I feel any anxiety and stuff goes, and it's just this submission, just humbly submitting to our God and saying, what would you have me do? I'm here for a purpose. Maybe you could let me know what you need me to do today, and I'll do that thing, and we'll see where we go from here. Melanie says, and maybe some of that isn't that the goals we think of are bad or won't happen at some point, but God also knows all the factors in our lives and when the timing is aligned for us to actually progress in an area. Yeah, I like that. That's a really good point, Melanie. I don't know. I just want us to feel better about where we are and better about our efforts. Start seeing ourselves for who we are. Start looking at the gifts. If you think about your friends or your daughters or your sons or people you care about, would you want them looking at themselves the way that you look at yourselves sometimes? That's kind of a thing that stops me in my tracks sometimes if I get on a negative spin. Okay, hold on a second. What if that was one of my daughters, and that's where she was going? I want her to see the good things. I want her to see the gifts. I want her to see all of the possibilities and opportunities, right? Not the limitations, not the negativity. Anyway.
Lori,
Yes, ma'am.
in my reading of Hebrew stuff,
yes,
I came across someone had said that the rabbis believe, the teachers, the higher people in the Jewish faith believe that if something was worth saying, it was worth saying beautifully. Talking about the poetry in the Bible and how between 33 and 75% of the Bible is poetry, depending on who you ask and how they interpret it. But that kind of stuck with me. It was like, okay, well, if something's worth saying, it's worth saying beautifully. If something's worth doing, it's worth doing beautifully. It made me just think, like, if something's worth cooking, is it worth cooking beautifully? And just kind of going through my actions. But on the flip side, to relate it to what you were saying, if we associate that with God was going to be like, well, I'm going to make this person, but I'm only going to do half, like, I'm going to do it halfway. That's not how God does stuff. He does stuff beautifully. And so, yeah, that's just kind of been a thought I've had this summer.
I love it. I love it. Melissa's our resident Hebrew expert, and we get, but not expert, I know, I'm teasing, but she likes to study that. So we get the meanings of the original Hebrew meanings of words, and I love that. I love that. And that's what I've been thinking a lot about, Melissa, is wait a second, I am criticizing one of his creations when I am criticizing me. And that doesn't feel right. And so I try to stop that. Wait a second, no. I need to think differently about that. So I love that, Melissa. Thanks. Other thoughts? We're getting close to the end here. This has been good, and I'm sorry I talked so much.
That's okay. And Lori, I just want to say thank you for sharing, because we just had a loss in our family as well, and it was the first time I've experienced that, and those are really special. Like, it's bittersweet because it's not what you want, and in our case, he was too young. But I'm just saying this to say thank you so much for opening your heart and sharing the beauty, because there is beauty and joy and in even the hardest things and the things that to us may feel like a loss, but I was going to say one other thing I'm trying to be conscientious of myself is as I try to, I'm still so new to I feel like, even though I've been trying to implement it, but I feel like that and recognizing nature has made me really think about how everything right now around me feels like it's trying to push me to be fast. Like, if you get on the internet, or if you, like, everything just wants you to consume so much or go quicker when you're driving, or and so I've been trying to be conscientious that when I feel my mind trying to go fast, or my body, to recognize it's actually God's way, I think, and nature's way to be slow. Everything, unless there's like an earthquake or a hurricane, which is rare, like, for the most part, things are really slow, like a seed growing and so I just have thought about how, kind of like what you're saying about how the world values maybe qualities that maybe aren't ideal. I've thought about how right now that's a high ideal in our culture, is to be super fast and to consume a lot of information, or and so, yeah, just the thought of how do I keep myself in a state where I can use my mind and better, because it's not being bombarded and rushed, and that quiet.
Yeah. Right. And purposeful. I kept thinking of that word as you were talking. You know, nature and God is moves slowly, purposefully, with intent. You know, what is my intent, you know, for today? What is it that I'm working toward? So many times I would find myself as a mother getting caught up in like the activity at hand. And I don't mean that in the good way of like being present, but let's say we were, you know, cleaning up the family room. I was so focused on getting the family room cleaned up that I would forget my overarching goal, which is raising, nurturing, teaching, training these children. I was all about just getting the job done. And so because my husband worked from home a lot of the years, which was such a blessing, you know, he could come up and just kind of whisper in my ear, now what's the goal here? What's the main job here? Is it nurturing the children or getting the family room picked up? And high on his list of priorities would be the family room, you know, I mean, way up there, but he always maintained that perspective. And I was so grateful for that. Okay, that's right. That would change my approach to the problem, you know, keeping that bigger, slower perspective. You know, I often in these Zoom meetings or just in talking to my friends, I'll talk about leaning back, you know, and I physically will do that. I will lean back and open up to have a wider perspective. You know, I'm getting too much right here and I'm just seeing what's right here. I need to open up and look at the bigger picture, kind of, you know, and it changes how I respond to situations. And I think in a very good way. So I love the idea of slowing down. I mean, just so many things came into my mind as you were saying that. I was thinking about, there's a song that as a woman, a female singer sings with the Mormon Tabernacle Choir or the whatever it's called now, but called Slow Down, you know, and it's just this, the first time I heard it, it was too slow. It took too long. I just couldn't get into it, you know, but I was just in the rush of stuff. Since then, I've been able to listen to it and it just, oh yeah, that's right. Okay, I like that, you know, but, or just being outside and watching something in nature and just stopping to observe a thing. I had a thought a couple weeks ago that I don't know how many things I've learned in my life that I've learned from observing. I want to learn more from observing, from taking that amount of time and focus, I think, you know, and just look at things around me. Just watch my children. I've wondered before, that's such a silly thing, but as I've looked at my husband's hands or at his face, you know, or anything, if I just saw, you know, this much of him, would I recognize him? Or, you know, could I draw his, you know, that part of his, how well do I know him? How much, you know, how do I really see the people around me? I don't know. But in a very fast-paced, hustle bustle, goals, lists, you know, standards, rules, that kind of a world, it is so good to stop and pause and reflect and wonder and all these things. There's such a place for those things. And I think they help make us better. And Christina, thank you for sharing with us a little bit about your experience too. It's hard when you lose people. And when you lose somebody young, I don't know the story, but that just brings a whole other element into it. So thank you for being open and sharing that with us. It's good to have people that can just feel with you.
Yeah, I've learned so many lessons in that short month that I feel like I haven't even been able to like articulate or write them all down, because it was just like, it was just a lot. But life lessons, like just changing your point of view on so many things, you know. So maybe someday I'll share some of those.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Was,
when you're ready. No, when you're ready. But it does change perspective. It changes so much. What really matters? You know, what's really important? A lot of that changes when you have those experiences. So, well, it has been wonderful to be together with you ladies today. It's been so nice. It's been good for my heart. I hope it's done something positive for yours. So go let your light shine and know that it can be the tiniest thing. That just being you makes a difference in this world. And I think that is one of the most important things to learn. Just being you, not going and doing some big thing. Just being in the world and being you makes a difference to people around you, and probably to people that you don't even know are watching you. So I hope you have a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing you again on Friday. I'd love it if for any of you that are able to come. We just love being together with friends. Summer's always hit and miss, you know, all the moms are busy doing things, but you'll get to meet all of us over the course of time, and what we call our quilt here, you know, the faces of all these friends just keeps growing, and it is so beautiful. It is my favorite quilt of all time. So this quilt of friends that we've made here. So thank you for coming and joining us.